When the world's two largest economies collide, the stakes are global. The United States and China are not just economic powerhouses, they are the engines that drive much of the world's trade, technology, and innovation. Their competition isn't limited to their own borders. It ripples across continents, affecting millions of lives and shaping the future of international relations. This isn't a war of armies, but of tariffs, tech bans, and political maneuvering. Instead of soldiers, it's bureaucrats and business leaders who are on the front lines, negotiating deals, imposing restrictions, and seeking advantages in a complex web of global commerce. Every new policy or sanction sends shockwaves through supply chains and financial markets. The US-China trade war is a battle for global influence, rewriting the rules of international trade. Both nations are vying to set the standards for technology, finance, and even the flow of information. The World Trade Organization and other global institutions are caught in the crossfire, struggling to adapt to this new era of rivalry. The outcome will shape economies everywhere, from Europe to Africa. Countries around the world are forced to choose sides or find ways to navigate between the two giants, as their own industries and workers feel the impact of shifting alliances and disrupted trade. The core question: can China win, or will the US curb Beijing's rise? This is not just about economics, but about who will lead the world in technology, military power, and cultural influence. Every summit, every negotiation, is a high-stakes chess match with global consequences. For businesses, it's a landscape of shifting supply chains. Companies are forced to rethink where they manufacture goods, how they source materials, and how they reach customers. Some are moving factories to new countries, while others are investing in automation to stay competitive. For consumers, it means higher prices. Everyday items, from smartphones to groceries, are becoming more expensive as tariffs and trade barriers drive up costs. Families around the world are feeling the pinch, adjusting their budgets and changing their spending habits. For governments, it's a test of alliances. Old partnerships are being reevaluated, and new coalitions are forming as countries try to protect their interests and adapt to the shifting balance of power. The conflict is about two visions for the future: America's free market ideals versus China's state-led model. Each side believes its system is the path to prosperity and global leadership, and both are determined to prove it on the world stage. Washington claims it's leveling the playing field. Beijing sees containment. The rhetoric is fierce, with each side accusing the other of unfair practices and strategic aggression. As of August 2025, the standoff has escalated, with both sides digging in. New rounds of tariffs, export controls, and diplomatic tensions have made compromise seem more distant than ever. This is the story of that conflict, its origins, and what it means for us all. The outcome will not only determine the fate of two nations, but also the direction of the global economy for years to come. To truly grasp the roots of today's standoff between the United States and China, we need to rewind the clock and examine the decades of tension that led us here. The story isn't just about recent headlines, it's about a long, simmering rivalry that's shaped the global economy. For years, American leaders voiced growing frustration over China's trade practices. Accusations of currency manipulation, forced technology transfers, and heavy government subsidies for Chinese industries became common refrains. These issues didn't just appear overnight, they built up over time, fueling resentment and suspicion on both sides of the Pacific. In 2018, the Trump administration took a dramatic step, imposing sweeping tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. This marked a turning point, transforming simmering trade disputes into an all-out economic confrontation. China didn't sit idly by. Instead, it retaliated with its own tariffs, zeroing in on American agriculture, especially soybeans and other key exports, hitting U.S. farmers hard and sending shockwaves through rural communities. In 2020, both sides agreed to a temporary truce, signing the so-called Phase 1 trade deal. But beneath the surface, core disagreements over technology, intellectual property, and industrial policy remained unresolved, leaving the door open for future conflict. Fast forward to early 2025. The U.S. government, citing national security and economic independence, slapped 50% tariffs on critical Chinese imports: electric vehicles, solar panels, and advanced electronics. This wasn't just about trade. It was a clear signal that America wanted to decouple from China in strategic sectors. In Washington, leaders framed these moves as essential to protecting American jobs, industries, and national security. The message was clear: the U.S. would no longer tolerate what it saw as unfair competition. Beijing quickly fired back. Chinese officials announced new tariffs on American goods, launched investigations into U.S. companies operating in China, and threatened to restrict exports of rare earth minerals, materials vital to high-tech manufacturing. China made its position clear. If the U.S. was willing to weaponize trade, then China would not hesitate to weaponize its control over global supply chains, putting pressure on American businesses and consumers alike. The result? The trade war entered a new, more confrontational phase, with both sides digging in and global markets reacting nervously to every new development. Now, both Washington and Beijing see this conflict as a fight for economic survival, a battle that could reshape the balance of power for decades to come. And as the world watches, caught in the crossfire, the stakes have never been higher. The outcome of this struggle will impact not just the US and China, but economies and lives across the globe. China enters this economic war with real strengths that have been built up over decades of rapid development and strategic planning. As the world's second-largest economy, China is not just a participant in global trade, but a dominant force shaping its direction. It's often called the world's factory, and for good reason. China's manufacturing sector is unmatched in both scale and efficiency, producing everything from smartphones and computers to clothing and automobiles. Its factories operate around the clock, powered by a massive workforce and cutting-edge automation, allowing China to deliver products at a speed and cost few can rival. Made in China is everywhere for a reason. Global supply chains depend on it. From electronics on store shelves in Europe to toys in American homes, Chinese goods are woven into the fabric of daily life worldwide. This deep integration gives China significant influence over the flow of global commerce. China has also diversified its trade, building strong economic ties across Asia, Africa, and Latin America through the ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. By investing in infrastructure and forging new trade routes, China has expanded its reach far beyond its borders, creating new markets and alliances that reduce its dependence on any single region. ASEAN, a bloc of Southeast Asian nations, is now China's largest trading partner. This relationship helps cushion the blow from U.S. tariffs and trade restrictions, providing China with alternative markets and partners in times of economic tension. Another critical advantage is China's control over more than 80% of the world's processed rare earth minerals. These minerals are essential for high-tech industries, powering everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced military equipment. By restricting these exports, Beijing gains powerful leverage over Western economies that rely on these materials for their own industries. This control can be used as a bargaining chip in negotiations, or as a tool of economic pressure. China's centralized political system is another key strength. Unlike many democracies, China's leadership can absorb economic pain and impose sweeping policies quickly, without the delays of political gridlock or public debate. The government can direct banks to lend, support struggling industries, and even suppress dissent if needed. This level of control allows for rapid response to crises and the ability to steer the economy in a unified direction. This long-term focus, planning decades ahead rather than just for the next election cycle, gives China a strategic advantage. Massive infrastructure projects and economic reforms are pursued with patience and persistence. While the US and other Western nations face frequent political cycles and shifting priorities, China can play the long game. This stability and resilience make Beijing a formidable player in the global economic arena, ready to weather storms and seize new opportunities as they arise. But China's strengths mask deep vulnerabilities. Its real estate sector is in crisis, with major developers defaulting and consumer confidence shaken. Domestic demand is weak. Chinese households save rather than spend, fearing for the future. The economy remains export-dependent, precisely what US tariffs target. Massive state subsidies have created industrial overcapacity, angering not just the US but also Europe. Overproduction forces China to dump goods abroad, sparking global backlash. The state's heavy hand stifles innovation and scares off foreign investors. Foreign direct investment is plummeting as regulatory risks rise. China's economic challenges, property woes, weak consumption, overcapacity, and declining investment make it more vulnerable than it appears. The facade of strength hides a storm within. The US wields immense economic power. Its consumer market is the world's largest. Access is a prize for any exporter. Tariffs aim to make Chinese goods less competitive and push companies to move supply chains elsewhere. The US is promoting friendshoring, shifting production to allies like Mexico, Vietnam, and India. But tariffs are a double-edged sword. They raise costs for American businesses and consumers, fueling inflation. Many companies simply relocate to other low-cost countries, not back to the US. America's go-it-alone approach risks alienating allies who also depend on China. Without a united front, China can exploit divisions among Western partners. The US strategy is powerful, but sustaining it is politically and diplomatically challenging. The limits of American leverage are becoming clear. The trade war's real impact is felt at home. Tariffs meant to protect US industries have raised costs for manufacturers and consumers. Farmers have been hit hard by Chinese retaliation, losing access to a massive market. Government subsidies help, but can't fully offset the damage. Inflation from higher import prices squeezes household budgets, especially for lower-income families. The promise of bringing jobs back to America has proven elusive. Most production shifts to other countries, not home. The globalized economy is too complex for simple solutions. The costs of this economic war are immediate and widespread. The benefits remain uncertain and distant. For many, the trade war feels like a losing battle. The US-China rivalry is redrawing the global map. China is building new alliances, deepening ties with Russia, and expanding BRICS to counter Western influence. It's promoting the yuan in global trade and developing alternatives to Western financial systems. The US is shoring up alliances like the Quad and AUKUS, aiming to contain China's rise. But most US allies also rely on China for trade, forcing them into a delicate balancing act. The biggest shift: global supply chains are fracturing. Companies are diversifying production, adopting a China plus one strategy. New manufacturing hubs are emerging, but costs and inefficiencies are rising. The world is moving toward a more fragmented, uncertain economic order. The era of seamless globalization is over. The US-China conflict sends shockwaves worldwide. Trade war uncertainty drags down global growth as businesses delay investment. Developing nations reliant on exports to China suffer when Chinese demand falls. The World Trade Organization is sidelined, and the rules-based order is eroding. Smaller countries are left vulnerable in a might-makes-right environment. The risk of economic conflict spilling into geopolitics is rising. As economic ties fray, incentives for peace weaken. The world faces a more dangerous, unpredictable future. The trade war is about more than economics. It's about global security. As 2025 ends, one thing is clear: there are no easy victories. Both the US and China have strengths and vulnerabilities, but neither can win outright. The conflict is a war of attrition. Who can absorb more pain? Full decoupling would be catastrophic for both economies and the world. Instead, we may see a fractured global economy with rival spheres of influence. The central question remains: can China outlast US pressure, or will Washington force change in Beijing? The answer will unfold over years, not days. The future of the global order hangs in the balance.